Welcome to jazztime.com. Today we're going to be comparing the Rolex SUBMARINER 116610 ceramic on your left with the Rolex Explorer 214270 2016 model on your right. We're going to be going through and comparing the case, the bezel, the bracelet, the buckle, and the movement. And finally, we're going to talk about some special features of each watch, why you might want to wear one in one situation versus another, and where you can buy it for the lowest price on jazztime.com. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to start with the case, and that's this thing my finger's pointing to. On the Rolex SUBMARINER, it uses what's called the super case. Now the super case is just that, it's super. It has these humongous lugs that you see here on the left, that my finger's pointing to. Compare that with the much smaller lugs here on your right for the Explorer. Now the case is what houses the dial, the movement, everything else. The thing that my finger is pointing to, that's the case. It's arguably one of the most important parts of the watch since it houses everything. It's kind of like the chassis of the car. Now, in terms of when they often talk about the case, they often talk about the diameter. Now, what is the size of the case? Well, the size of the case is what is from my index finger to my thumb. That distance on the SUBMARINER is 40 millimeters. Now, that distance on the Explorer between my thumb and index finger here is 39 millimeters. Now, you're probably asking yourself, well, that's only 1 millimeter difference between the two. But as you can probably see sitting here in your own home, that the SUBMARINER looks a lot larger. And that's because Rolex was able to create the solution of being much larger by using thicker lugs, which doesn't affect the diameter of the watch, along with a much more pronounced bezel. Now the bezel itself, which is what we're getting into next, is much larger on the SUBMARINER. Okay, so now that we're talking about the bezel, we're going to focus here, and you'll notice, what do you notice about this SUBMARINER? It has this black insert. The insert itself is made of Cerachrome ceramic. Ceramic is virtually unscratchable. It doesn't fade, and it really looks fantastic for pretty much ever. Now on the Explorer, you'll notice that it doesn't have that. This bezel here, if you can see, is actually made of stainless steel. And why would you want a stainless steel versus a ceramic? Well, some good things about stainless steel is that if it does get hit, it only scratches or it bends or is malleable. Whereas on the SUBMARINER, if you do happen to hit the bezel and smash your watch against something, the ceramic won't scratch or bend, it'll just straight crack. And replacing one of these ceramic bezels is like $1,500. Whereas replacing one of these stainless steel bezels is probably only about $200 and even less from jazztime.com. So that's one of the benefits. Now, as far as function goes on the bezel, now I'm going to bring your attention to here. Let's say you're trying to calculate elapsed time and you want to see how long, let's say you've been watching this YouTube video. Well, you can turn the bezel, put the paraloid on the minute hand, and as the minute goes to the left, then it will do something like this. After 10 minutes, it will look like that. You look down simply at the bezel and you determine how much time has elapsed. Now this can be used in a diving fashion, for which this SUBMARINER is built for. Okay, now on your right, it doesn't have that function. It only allows you to, it actually doesn't have any function for the bezel. Now, why would you want a bezel that has no function? Well, perhaps you like a watch that fits easily under the cuff, that if you do scratch it and do something to it, it's not going to be completely destroyed. And you'll notice that it's just a domed thing that goes around the case. You guys notice that? And it's much thinner. And it also fits underneath the cuff, which is important. A lot of people wear this watch while at work or with a suit. And it's important that the bezel isn't intrusive. Okay, so on the one hand, you have the bezel that looks much larger and ceramic on your left versus the bezel on your right that is domed. Okay, now let's move on to the bracelet. Now the bracelet itself on both of these are brushed stainless steel. Now you can see that. Now the lug width, meaning from my thumb to this side, is 20 millimeters on both of them. And you'll notice that this polish here is what's called a satin finish. They're both made out of 904L steel, which is used in chemical industries, aero, space, and it's one of the hardest steels there is. And it's Rolex is one of the only companies that makes their watches in 904L steel. It gives it this beautiful shine, and the shine lasts pretty much forever. It's very expensive to make things in 904L steel, and both of these have it. They have the same type of finish. Some watches have brushed and some have polished. In this case, both the Explorer on your right and the Submariner on your left have brushed stainless steel. So in that sense, they're identical. Now moving on to where it does change on the buckle, you can see these things side by side. The buckle itself here on your left is the Submariner, which is much longer, as you can see, where my thumb is pointing to, than the Explorer on your right, which is much shorter. And you're probably asking yourself, well, why would you want that? Well, because on the Submariner, it has a very interesting glide lock clasp. Now, both of these are Oyster safety locks. As you can see here, an Oyster safety lock, for you that don't know, is this is an Oyster clasp, and the safety lock is this right here. Bang, that clip right there, that's the safety lock. And that allows the watch to not be opened if unwantingly opened. The Explorer also has that. And I'm going to open that. That's the safety clasp. And when I open it, it comes up with the same style clasp. Held side by side, you'll notice that when they're opened, they actually look identical. And that's pretty much because they are. Now you're wondering, why is this part smaller? The clasp itself smaller on the Explorer versus the Submariner? And when I turn this over, you'll see why. This is the Submariner. And you'll notice, right where my thumb is pointing to, that if I pull out and I pull to the left, then it reveals what's called the glide lock clasp. And that allows for 20 millimeters of play, or 20 millimeters of extension if you're using it for diving and putting it over your wetsuit. Now, how does that look on the front side? And you'll probably notice that it has this small link here. That's for, you can take that out if you want. It's a small extension because they realize not everybody uses a full link to extend. This is a fully extended state. I'm going to put it back to its smaller state. And that's how it looks like in the smaller state. And that allows for 20 millimeters room. Now, it's going to need a bigger clasp, as you can see, because it has that glide lock. Now, seen side by side. Okay, now on the Explorer itself, what kind of movement do you have? Well, you don't have the glide lock capability, but you still have a 5 millimeter play. Now, this is the watch all the way, the bracelet all the way out. That's what it looks like. Now, when it's cold, for example, or you want a tighter fit, you can push it this way and then clip it in. And how that looks like on the front side is like this. So that allows for 5 millimeters of play. The Submariner on your left allows for 20 millimeters of play. Okay, now let's move on to the movement. Now, each of these watches houses a superlative chronometer, meaning they have been tested to the utmost stringent guidelines of 2 seconds per day. The Submariner here uses a 31-35 tried and tested movement. This movement has been around forever, 31-35. Both of them have a solid case back, as with all Rolexes that you see in the back. Solid case back meaning you can't see through it. And for the Submariner, you'll notice that it has a case size that you would think would be much larger since it has an extra date function, whereas the Explorer doesn't. But when you look at them in terms of profile, the profile of the two watches are essentially the same. Very, very similar. The Submariner coming at just a hair thicker than the Explorer. And that's probably because of the movement having a few more functions. Now for the movement on the Explorer, it has a 31-32 movement. And that 31-32 movement has new and improved shock resistance capabilities. And that makes sense since the Explorer ideally should be worn for those who are using the watch in exploring type situations such as climbing Mount Everest in the Himalayas or doing things that are going to be requiring outdoor activity. Of course, the Submariner also can do that, but it does not have the same shock ability, shock proofness that the Explorer on your right does. Now, let's move on to the dial, which is one of the most important things of the watch. Now, on the dial, the Submariner has what's called luminous hour markers. These luminous hour markers, in fact, are covered in white gold. Most people don't know that. You see these hour markers right here? Those, in fact, are white gold. They're all made by hand, and they glow in the dark. They glow, the newer ones start to glow in blue, whereas the ones from 3 years or more, like 2012 or earlier, they glow in green. Now I'm going to try to show you what that looks like. You guys can kind of see that. Kind of glows in green, blue. Have the light, and maybe this will be better for you. Okay, so that's showing the luminescent in the blue. And you can see if you were diving or it was nighttime or you were in low light capacity, you could still see the dial quite clearly because the hour hand, the marker, the second, and all the hour markers are well lit. And they stay lit for guess how long? Well, on a full charge, they can stay lit to around 8 hours, typically the amount of time that someone sleeps. Now, for the Explorer, that also glows, and in the newer 2016s, they glow in blue, and even the 369 also luminous. So there you have it, the difference in dial, the difference in bracelet, differences in cases, buckles, movements. Now, I'm going to try these on, let you know some of my thoughts about them. Now, if I were trying to wear the Submariner and I was going to be diving or doing water sports, I would be looking more for a sports watch such as this Submariner. If I wanted a more sporty watch with a dark dial that was bigger and beefier, this would be the watch I would choose. If I were looking for more of a dress style watch, but that could also be worn in a sports type capacity, I would be looking for the Explorer, something that could fit underneath the cuff. Something that was understated and didn't look so, bold. Or I just might look at both of them and think, maybe I want both of them. You know, if you go to jazztime.com, JAZTIME.com, we have both of these watches at a low price guarantee, free shipping, and a 1-year warranty. Now check these watches out at jazztime.com. That's JAZTIME.com. And let us know what you think in the comment section below. This is the internet. You can write anything you want, and I promise I won't erase it. Check us out at jazztime.com.
If you want to find out more about the watch you just saw in the video, you can just click below on Show More to see the full description. Then you can check the link next to model as seen in video, click on it and you will get to the proper page where you can see all the details. If you're watching on a mobile phone, you have to click on the arrow down on the right hand side below the video to see the full description. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. If you would like to share this video with your friends, you can use the share button below and share it on any platform you like. If you have questions, constructive feedback, want to tell us about some mistakes or misspeaks, just write a comment below. If you want to see more videos like this, you should subscribe to our channel and visit our channel page where you can find all the videos. And if you're interested in a specific watch brand, you can check out our playlists. If you want to check the price for a watch or want to buy one, remember at jazztime.com you always get a steep discount, so you should check the prices with us. If you want to know the price for a specific watch, just go to Google, type in JazzTime, plus the brand, model and the details you're interested in, and Google will find the right page for you. Thank you for watching.